the green machine. We hit them hard, so they see green. We're big and strong, we're fast and lean. That's why we're called the green machine. We're the bad and mean green machine.
The Canberra Raiders joined the New South Wales Rugby League competition in 1982. The first 5 years brought little joy and no finals appearances. During this time, coach Don Furner and secretary John McIntyre worked on a philosophy which was about to give the club sustained success.
I didn't really want to go to Sydney because of, this is my lifestyle and a bit of a country boy, brought up in the country areas of Queensland.
Here's an overlap for Meninga. Breaks one. Chance for Queensland. Meninga will go into the corner. Great try, Queensland. Mal Meninga.
I felt there was this one-team town mentality. Their juniors were very strong. Their reserve grade just made the finals.
The new State of Origin concept was unearthing players in Queensland who wanted to try their hand in the New South Wales competition.
It was great because we're instant mates, so we're sort of newbies, coming into the Canberra system.
Mal Meninga, Gary Belcher, Sam Bacco, Gary Coyne and Steve Walters came to Canberra in 1986.
Obviously having Gary there who played with me at South, and then we had Gary Coyne who just used to live down the road from me in Brisbane, even though he was playing for Winner Manly. I didn't know much about Steve Walters, to be honest with you, but Don's eye, he's seen Steve Walters and he was certainly right there.
Another person to head down to Canberra that year was a former Australian winger and promising young coach, Wayne Bennett.
He brought with him Kevy Walters and Peter Jackson, and Peter obviously played with him at South as well, so that familiarisation.
And in 1987, the Raiders qualified for their inaugural finals appearance and first ever grand final. For Mal Meninga, he had his own personal battles with injuries. During this time, he suffered 4 broken arms that threatened his very playing career.
I trained as hard as I possibly could, for that 18 months I was out with those broken arms. And Wayne said to me, I think the doc thinks you can play. So I had an x-ray done, and to see how it was all progressing. It was fine. And found a big guard.
Back into Meninga. Meninga surges for the line, and he scored a try. Mal Meninga scored a try for Canberra.
Again, I didn't last the game, but the impact was good. I really enjoyed it.
Ladies and gentlemen, a fairy tale come true for the blokes from Canberra, the Raiders.
In the second week, I come back and playing in the grand final. It had an adverse effect because I just wasn't fit enough to put my hand up on a pretty hot day, against a very hot Manly side.
The Raiders were defeated on the day, but the seed had been sown for greater success to come.
I was fortunate where I toured 87 with the Wallabies to Argentina.
There's Ricky Stuart, elusive, and this fellow's really hitting his straps just when Canberra want him to do it too.
In those days, playing rugby union, you weren't allowed to talk to a rugby league club. I still remember Warren Ryan and Matt Parrish actually snookering me in a corner at the car park. I said, I can't talk to you guys here. And I said, look, I've got a handshake deal that I'll always talk to John McIntyre before I make any decision, but I'm going to go to rugby league. I made a phone call to John McIntyre. He was up on the Wednesday speaking to a great friend those days, but turned into being my manager, was John Fordham. We went to John's house and had a couple of bottles of red and discussion, and I was at Balmain Leagues Club the next day telling Keith Barnes and Warren Ryan that I was going to the Raiders.
He suited us because we had such a great footy team and could play the game. He was putting us into positions where he would allowed us to play footy.
In 1988, Tim Sheens came down from Penrith to take over as coach of the side. The perfect mentor for the wealth of junior talent coming through at Canberra. Sheens had taken the Panthers to their first ever finals appearance by blooding the likes of Greg Alexander, Mark Geyer and John Cartwright.
Sheensy came in to what was a very good side, and we sort of helped each other as a group, so we had some pretty influential players playing the game. A lot of young kids, the Laurie Daly's, Ricky Stuart starting to come through, Bradley Clyde's, Glenn Lazarus.
Yeah, it was a magical time. I signed on with the Raiders when I was 15.
Bradley Clyde on his way through now. Duffy slipped over. He's no chance of getting him. And here's another try for the Canberra Raiders.
I would go along and train with first grade, and at the start of the week, all of the club trained together, and I was a part of that. And, here I was being introduced to Mal and the senior players.
Sheens carried on an initiative by new Broncos coach Wayne Bennett to institute a youth squad, and many of the Raiders' future stars came through this brigade.
Unbeknownst to me, at the same time, Ricky had just started. There was Lazo, Laurie. We're all just starting, but we had to be mentored and taught how to win football games, or what are the behaviours that can win you the games at the top level.
Attack was the name of the game. The Raiders became the first team to score more than 400 points in a season in 1988. The following year, Canberra went on a late season winning streak and qualified for their second grand final in 3 years.
Looking for the line, the pass is bounced once to Belcher. Try to Belcher, and the Raiders is at a grand final berth.
It was tough work just to get there. There was a lot of games that went down to the wire.
They'll bomb. O'Sullivan's bombed across the goal now. Up they go for it. Who's taking it? It's loose. Picked up by Daly. Daly's given it out to Ferguson. Ferguson goes for the line and scores. Oh, can you believe this? Jigger Ferguson has scored alongside the post.
Looking back, that really helped us with that when the game went into extra time.
I just grabbed the football, got the bucket of sand, put the ball on the ground, and just kicked it as quick as I possibly can.
We're going to have 10 minutes each way, extra time.
That sudden death football, week in and week out, had us really well prepared for not just 80 minutes of footy.
Meninga's picked it up. Chicken George has got support too. And they're pulled down just, is he almost? He's there! Try! Steve Jackson reached out and scored. What will win the Premiership for the Canberra Raiders?
That moment that Steve Jackson scores the try, it still brings the hairs on the back of my neck up. It's just a magical moment.
All our supporters who come here today, all the supporters back in Canberra, thanks very much.
The city grew a soul, on that day.
It was an unbelievable moment, unbelievable game. I think it created a backbone here for the Canberra Raiders.
In '89 was probably underestimated because people didn't realise how good Laurie Daly and Ricky Stuart and Bradley Clyde, all these kids were going to be.
In 1990, the Raiders moved from their original home at Queanbeyan and Seaford Oval into Canberra and a brand new stadium located at the Australian Institute of Sport at Bruce.
We just grew off the back of '89 grand final. Again, the team was really stable and, it was a successful year. And it wasn't just us, it was the whole club. The whole club was successful, our jersey flag and our 23s and the reserve grade, all made the final as well. So it was a huge club effort.
It's all over. The grand final is over. The Premiership has gone back to Canberra.
It's a club, the Raiders. It's not just first grade. And it's how we still promote it today. And these kids who are playing under 21s today, they're coached and looked upon as our future.
In 1991, Canberra had to do it the hard way again, winning 7 in a row to make their 4th grand final in 5 years.
Bradley Clyde. Wood gets a double.
But this time, Penrith turned the tables to take their first ever premiership.
Guy gets it. Racing Simmons. Yes! That's it.
I feel as though we had the talent in our team to certainly achieve some great things, and until half-time in that game in 91, things were going according to plan.
He tried his heart out, Clyde. He was everywhere where the ball was in both attack and defence.
Nothing wrong with coming second in this toughest competition in the world.
In 1992, the Raiders were hit hard by the salary cap and lost players of the calibre of Glenn Lazarus, Brent Todd, David Barnhill and Nigel Gaffey.
We've had a lot of success over that 5-year period. If we even go back to '87, so the game decided to bring in the salary cap, and because of that and because of that ruling, it split the club apart, really.
We had to say goodbye to some champions. There was Lazo and David Barnhill moved on, and a whole host of others. And I thought Tim and the club responded really quickly and strongly with sourcing talent from different areas.
Overall, when we talk about the 3 grades, I think it was around just lost over 30 players from the system, so it made it really difficult. But then, Sheensy being the innovator that he is, went looking to help build the club.
Tim Sheens and the recruitment team searched far and wide for replacements and signed the likes of Sean Hoppy, Paul Osborne and Phil Blake. Old Raiders Chris O'Sullivan, Craig Bellamy and David Woods returned, while youngsters Brett Mullins, Jason Croker and Ken Nagas would emerge.
David Grant, he was captain coach of the side at the time, for the Kyogle Turkeys they were.
Nagas goes over the halfway.
It was just about coming down for a trial. He linked me up with the development team at the time, and it was just sort of started from there at the age of 17 and 18.
The year was a rebuilding one for Canberra. They missed the semi-finals for the first time since 1986. But in 1993, they rebounded strongly, winning the pre-season challenge.
All these juniors are starting to pop their heads up, the Brett Mullins, the Jason Crokers, the David Furness, David Boyle in particular. So those sort of players started to pop their head up and become, really good first-grade players. And then Tim went to New Zealand and was the first coach to go watch the Pacific Championships they had over there, Pacific Cup, and brought back 5 players. From that, Noah Nadruku and Quinton Pongia, Johnny Lomax, Ruben Wiki.
In 93, not too dissimilar to this year, it blooded a number of players that no one had ever heard of.
The Raiders were casting their net far and wide in the pursuit of another championship. The makeup of the team has similarities to the way then player and now coach Ricky Stuart has set up the current Canberra side.
We've got so many areas that we recruit from, our country areas. We've had a lot of success out of Brisbane, we've had a lot of success out of New Zealand, and now we've had so much success out of England.
I love Canberra, it's very quiet, big, like a big country town, so yeah, it really suits the person that I am.
Whitehead, so simple, so effective.
I really enjoy being here in Canberra, and obviously having a daughter now, I think it's a great place for her to grow up in.
Yeah, I like it.
He's kicked it! Jamal Fogarty!
It's obviously got the city in here, but then for us, we live on the outskirts in a nice, small, quiet suburb, and there's no traffic, no matter where you're going, 20, 25 minutes. I really like that. Where we live, kangaroos are on the side of the road in the nature strips there, and a 20-minute drive, you got the city, so you got the best of both worlds. We can come into town and have some nice food and cafe, the city life, but then we can also put the kids on a push bike and go for a ride and get that nature connection as well.
It's a wonderful place for me to grow up in, and I didn't understand why a lot of people didn't really have a favourable thing to say about it. It was only because it was a government town and politicians visited there at different times.
Canberra's a great place to live in. It gets a bit of a rough trot because people associate Canberra with cold and politicians and public servants, but it's bigger than that, it's greater than that. It's a great place to live, easy to get around, facilities here are great. Great if you're young and you're starting a family. People need to understand how good Canberra is. It's a bit of a hidden gem in my mind.
Like Mal Meninga still lives here in Canberra, and so many players who don't know much about Canberra come to Canberra, bring their families here, have families here, start their new families here. So many of them stay here and/or absolutely loved their time here. So we know what we got, and we cherish it. It's important for us to cherish it because it's a wonderful community.
In 1993, the Raiders were back to their best and on their way to a potential grand final against the mighty Brisbane Broncos. But a cruel injury to Ricky Stuart curtailed their finals campaign.
We were leading quite well against Parramatta, and he said to me, "Mate, why don't you come off?" And I said, "No, just give me another 10 minutes." 2 years ago, we played West Tigers in the last game. That was for us to make the 8. Went to Jamal at half time. I said, "Mate, you're sitting out the next 40." And he said, "Oh, just give me a little bit more time." I said, "No, you're coming off, and I'll tell you why later."
In 1994, the Raiders, like the year before, were on a roll during the regular season. But this time their depth and experience were stronger. They also had added motivation to reclaim their first premiership since 1990. Captain Mal Meninga announced his retirement at year's end.
It was one of the greatest days at Bruce Stadium, having the kids at the back of the dead ball line. They couldn't fit them into the actual enclosed area, so they had to put them into the back of the field, and that's what rugby league here and sport here in Canberra does for the community.
Again, people just don't realise the passion and the love they have for the club. You know, it's brought them so much joy.
It's pretty amazing, like seeing that sort of stuff, and so it should be, because you know he done a lot of stuff with the club. He was one of the first international players that they brought down from Brisbane. He done a lot for the community, and to see Canberra turn it on that day for him, the big fella deserved it.
The Raiders needed to beat the Seagulls at Manly in the final round to clinch a top 3 spot and avoid an elimination matchup against the defending premiers Brisbane.
Ridge with the dropout. Menzies went up high. Daly was on the end of it. The siren sounds. Canberra have won. Canberra goes into the top 3.
That's what stands out, I think, about the 94 season, is just that the playoffs.
Particularly the Norse team in 94, I thought was superb. It was a forward pack that deserved a premiership.
Moore did well. Florimo puts a kick out to the wing, and it's been picked up by Nagas. Swooped upon it. I'm not going to say it this time, but I think he's going to score. Yes, he does.
Then we had to play Canterbury, and it went to extra time.
There's 45 seconds left on the clock. It comes across for Ricky Stuart. He dummies and then jinks, and there's Furner gets it away. Wesley, he puts it down.
Back then, if you went extra time again, we had to play midweek on a Tuesday. So Tim said, nah, just get a result, whether we win or lose. We'll come back in another week's time.
Back it goes, Halligan, he gets the shot in. I think it's there. Yes, it is.
So we end up losing and then playing North the week after again.
Given the situation that led up to it, Moore taken around the nose by Lomax. He's gone. He's off. He sent him off.
North should have beat us. Johnny being sent off. Fortunately for us, Gary Larson got sent off.
Lomax was their chief carter-upper, and he was doing it very well, all those yards up the middle. There's a spear tackle now. McCallum's ruling on this one as well.
He sent him off. Larson is gone.
As soon as that tackle happened with Gary, I just said, mate, you've got to even this up now. He's got to go too, and I had to put pressure on him because we were playing poor, and they had a full steam, all the momentum, and we just couldn't get our game together that day against North Sydney. Unfortunately, it got back to 12 all and we kicked into a bit of gear.
It gave us a bit of an awakening that, hang on a sec, you know, we're not as good as we think we are, you know, so we're a bit ahead of ourselves. And because of that clunkiness, it gave us an opportunity to reset again. And we had a bit of a chat straight after the game and said, listen, if we're going to play like that, you know, we're going to lose the grand final.
Grand final week came, and for many of the Raiders players, there was added motivation of a kangaroo tour occurring that year, with the squad to be announced after the game.
To be picked in the Kangaroo Tour, it was something I had never done and I was really looking forward to.
For Meninga, he had added motivation. He would become the first person to go on 4 Kangaroo Tours as a player.
Not many people get an opportunity to finish their careers in a grand final, and not many get an opportunity to be part of a grand final and win it, you know. So we had a bit of a chat about, listen, I just wanted the players to prepare the best they could ever prepare, and I'll do the same.
We knew it all had to come to an end at some stage, I guess, and that gave us a milestone to work towards to make sure that we sent Mal off as a champion that he deserved to be.
When you talk about preparation for a big match, I felt that was the best that I've ever been involved with.
Coach Tim Sheens had pulled a masterstroke, naming ball-playing prop Paul Osborne to replace the suspended John Lomax and switching wingers Ken Nagas and Noah Nandruku.
We all said, oh, Ezra, you know, he's big, hard, young kid, you know, bringing him through his raw bone, he's got a good little offload and he'll be right up to this. And he said, okay, great, that's good. And, you know, he comes out, he announces Aussie. I thought, Jesus Christ, we've got big fat Aussie.
Here's Osborne, he throws the dummy. Can he get it away? Yes, there's a try!
That was Sheens' call, wasn't our call. But in reality, you know, that 23 minutes was what won us the grand final.
Oh, Osborne, another great pass. Nagas down the left flank, in and away. Oh, shut the gate. Nagas, he scores.
He always still tells me that he should have got Clive Churchill that year, Aussie.
A
try to star 5'8" Laurie Daly put Canberra in command at half-time.
The Daly that capitalises, runs through the gap, over the 30, support is coming, Daly, he won't need it, Daly, he scores! Daly puts it down!
Laurie's a runner. Always loved Laurie a little bit wider. If it was 10-all with 3 to go, if it were down by 2 or 3 to go, you've got to get him the ball.
You know, when he was on, he had those eyes that never blinked, and you knew he was on.
As it comes away from Clyde, it's back to Stuart. He goes with the reverse kick across, looking for Nagas and Mullins. It comes down for Nagas. Nagas goes in.
Nagas' second try off a Ricky Stuart bomb put the game in hand, and then the retiring captain delivered an iconic moment in his farewell appearance on Australian soil.
Well, I never scored in a grand final. In Brisbane South, I played in 6 grand finals, never scored, and played 5 grand finals with the Raiders, but never scored.
Intercepted by Meninga. McGregor pursues. McGregor's after Meninga. The crowd roars. The crowd roars. Their delight as the Australian captain scores a try in the grand final.
Thankfully for Jason Smith, I got his best pass of the day, probably. That allowed me to run just enough. I probably couldn't have gone much further, but just enough to score that intercept try. And it was sort of, for me, it was icing on the cake because it was part of what I wanted to achieve.
The big fella gets his own piece of the cake.
You couldn't have it any other way. I think it was probably 5 to go. Intercept, palms off, Jared McCracken and scores next to the post, and then siren goes, and then it's just like a fairy tale ending. I mean, I don't believe in fairy tales, but that was pretty special, the way it ended like that for him.
It's probably one of my favourite tries, his try in the grand final. You can never paint the picture you want on how to retire, but he got the best one.
It was meant to be, wasn't it? There was no doubt that Mal was going to score a try on that day. It was just a matter of when.
Canberra are the champions. Third time in their short history. 36 to 12, 7 tries to 2.
It felt as though we got back to where I thought we should be.
That belief and confidence, I think, was built from the foundation from those previous years. And we had a number of experienced Origin players, a number of experienced internationals.
I think with the wealth of experience married with the younger players coming through that were putting pressure on us to perform, that culminated in a great footy being played every week in and week out.
We had 13 players went on the field, and we started on fire, and we didn't take the foot off the throat, so to speak.
The Raiders won the grand final and had 7 members of their squad selected for what was to be the final ever Kangaroo Tour. The emergence of Super League the following year, coupled with the retirement of Canberra's leader, Mal Meninga, saw the end of the dynasty that culminated in 5 grand final appearances and 3 premierships.
I think the platform, the foundation was being built from around 87, definitely into 89, 90. And I reckon that the 94 team was probably at its greatest height of self-confidence and belief of once we cross that sideline, we're going to win.
Of all the teams I played in, Clubland, I thought 94, talent-wise, and what they went on to, a lot of the players after that year, was probably the best team I played in.
The lessons learned from that time is still practiced today as the Raiders strive to return to their former glory.
We're a one-town team. We struggle to recruit the marquee players, so we've got to build our own. I mean, you really look at the only really big signing we've ever had is Mal Meninga. And what a signing he was.
There's great hope in the region that this glory can come again, with one of their finest ever players, Ricky Stuart, leading the way, and many others involved.
He's building a good young group at the moment, it's going to take some time.
Well, it does connect the past with the current, but at the same time, there's not too many people in the modern game with the same level of football knowledge, and Sticky's seen the evolution of the game.
And I feel as though if you buy into Canberra, Canberra buys into you. And there's no greater example than a guy by the name of Jamal Fogarty, our halfback. He's an ambassador of Ronald McDonald House. He does so much in the community. He's just a really good person outside being a good footy player. He's bought into the community and the community love him.
the best thing about Sticky, he's so caring and genuine away from the football field. Everyone probably sees the Ricky Stuart on the sidelines blowing up or in the box or press conferences and all that kind of stuff, but he always takes the time out to say hello to people at training. Anything in the community people need, he's the first man to put his hand up, and I think that's probably why we get a whole lot of support back from the community, because if your head coach is doing that, us as players, you know, if Sticky can do it, we can do it. We can get out in the community, mix it up and say hello to people and whatnot, and in return they can do the same for us.
You know, he's the right man to, you know, to take the club under his wing and hopefully have a bit more success.
Well, I've always said you don't have to be born in Canberra to feel as though you belong here. If you're a professional, you work hard, you actually respect the jumper, and Canberra will respect you, and I know the Raiders will.